Hi guys, welcome to our podcast, Mental Myths and Mysteries. It's alright, it's okay, but you should listen anyway. Hi guys. For the holidays, Triple M is showcasing local artists from around the U.S., and you can check out our social media page to see art this week from Alejandro Ivory. You can find Alejandro on Insta at IvorySin88. That's IVORYSIN 88. Support small business this holiday and pick up a custom t-shirt or hit him up for a commission. Thanks again, Alejandro, for sharing your art with us and for being a listener. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Triple M Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal. I'm here with Fee. She's going to tell us today about Hikikomori. Why do I want to call it Hikikomori?
I don't know.
It sounds more Asian. The Hikiki is weird.
The Hikiki?
Hikiki. It sounds like Islander or Hawaiian or something.
Like pigeon, almost.
Like pigeon? What is that?
Like what they speak in Hawaii.
They speak pigeon?
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
It's like slang, basically.
Learning slang. So many things from you. I know Tagalog because...
That's Filipinos.
Yeah. Because I'm a nurse. And guess what Filipinos do for a living?
Nurse. They export nurses.
They export nurses. It's like their number one gross domestic product. Exportation of nurses. Oh my gosh.
You have to know at least like 4 or 5 Filipino nurses per person.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really excited about this topic today because I feel like it really lends a viewpoint of what we're all kind of going through with COVID.
Right, especially since we're back on phase 1.
Womp womp.
It's fine. I'm okay. I can do this.
We can do this.
We'll
just record way more podcasts.
We're starting 10 more podcasts about several different subjects.
We're going to have podcasts coming out the ass.
Ugh.
This is our mental health treatment right here. No therapist.
No
just
therapist, no
bitch
bars,
into a mic all fucking
no happy
day.
Hour.
Exactly. Our happy hour's right here while we're drinking and talking. Although we're not drinking.
We're not, because
it's sober hour.
It's sober.
It's not 5 o'clock somewhere right now.
It is 5 o'clock somewhere.
I mean, okay,
just not
not
here.
Seriously, though, I'm really excited about this. As an extrovert, I've really struggled during COVID. Mm-hmm. I've learned a lot of really great things about myself. It's kind of taken me on a journey to kind of know what I really want to do with my life. But at the same time, being socially distanced from everyone has been really hard.
Right.
I'm big on affection and bonding and connecting with people, and not being able to do that is tough. Even though my extroversion only goes so far and I kind of want to recluse around, I know that when I really start to get into a feeling of isolation, it can be really damaging for my health. And so the Hikikomori, I'm going to give up on saying it, right?
So to start off on why I'm interested in this subject,
you're going to tell him about being a weeb now?
Again, I'm not a weeb, okay?
She knows every name of every anime on Netflix and every anime character in every anime. And she shows me anime memes multiple times a day.
It's not that bad. I just want somebody to get it, and I'm like trying to force people to get it.
We went to the adult store, wink wink, and the only thing she wanted there was Hello Kitty.
Yeah, it was a Hello Kitty
thing.
It was like a kawaii vibrator.
Yeah, she's not a weeb, not at all.
No. But there's a wonderful anime called Welcome to the NHK. It started out as a novel, then ended up being a manga, then they made it into an anime because people.
So for the non-anime people, can you explain to them what a manga is?
It is like a graphic novel.
Those are popular with the kids nowadays.
Yeah, it's like a graphic novel, but...
You know my favorite thing about mangas? They read backwards.
Yes, they read backwards.
I'm really not interested, but when you open the book... So, traditionally in America, you open the book and, you read from left to right. In a manga, you read from right to left.
Yeah.
And it's almost, don't you have to like turn it upside down too to be able to open it right? I don't know.
No, you just like basically you flip it over. You just
flip it over
the book and read from the
right to left. It's so weird. Do they write from right to left in Japan also?
They do.
Oh, so it's kind of like the British drive on the other side of the road too. Got it. Okay. So the HK, what?
Welcome to the NHK.
Welcome to the NHK. Okay.
About a man who was a shut-in. He's been like this for a couple of years. He did have a life at one point. He had a girlfriend. He had a job. He had things going on for him. And then all these things started to crumble. And he's just like living in his studio apartment playing these video games where you pretend to like hang out with people.
Sims, basically.
Yeah, basically Sims, but they're like dating Sims.
He's like living in an alternate reality.
Yes. And he is kind of paranoid because he thinks this radio show is conspiring with the government to breed a whole generation of shut-ins.
So now he's developing some paranoia.
Yes.
Which is pretty common for people that go through isolation. Mm-hmm. It's actually a subject I'm really passionate about as a psych nurse because I also work in corrections. Mm-hmm. And I've had several patients and I've read a couple of books on what social isolation does to people in corrections who have to go to the hole, as they call it.
Right.
And it can actually cause paranoid schizophrenia to develop.
And that's something that's really big with being a Hikikomori is that you do these things in isolation, but the government or the health ministry in Japan, the way they categorize it is that you don't reach that level of schizophrenia or paranoia, that you're like doing this with no mental health issues involving it. That's what they say.
Well, and it sounds like the viewpoint of that is that they start out with anxiety. Mm-hmm. Then they kind of recluse into themselves to cope with the anxiety because Japan is not big about like expressing emotions, right? So the best way to deal with that socially is to just internalize it.
Yeah.
And then you're right. Like, I guess you didn't initially start being a hikikomori because of a mental health disorder necessarily, but then it may develop into one.
Right.
Because you're being so isolated all the time.
And a lot with the show, too, he, one of my favorite things is that, yes, he's a shut-in, and a lot of hikikomoris is they are technically shut-ins, but they do leave the house, they do leave their room, but they like to leave at a time where there's not a lot of people out and about. So you see them out at nighttime, you see them hanging out, going grocery shopping at nighttime if they're able to do that, or if they needed to get some fresh air, that's when they leave the house. It's when there's like no one around.
So it's kind of like how I cope with my ADHD, basically, because there's so much external stimuli that I like to be up later at night because I feel like I can accomplish things then. And I actually say that's pretty common, that people that have issues where there's too much sensory stimulation around them, whether that be ADHD or autism or Asperger's or maybe agoraphobia even, that we like to stay up later at night and then we sleep in.
I feel that too, and I feel like I am a night person and a morning person. Basically, I just don't sleep. But I like to be up during the hours where everybody's like, I like early morning to get things done because everybody's usually like super chill. If you ever walked into a Walmart at like 8 a.m., it's just you.
Yeah, there's nobody there.
It's amazing.
It's the best time to grocery shop, for sure.
But I feel like with hikikomoris, it's not really just like a sensory thing. It's an avoidant thing because they can hang out with each other. But I feel like they think the general society is judging them, which is why they like to be
I'm sure
out.
they are, right? Because I mean, judging is like a major thing that goes on in Japan.
Judging is a major thing that goes on. Like, they even have a whole term for people who they consider what they call NEETs, which is like not in education, not working, and not in vocational training. Right. Basically, they're just being taken care of by their parents. And so a lot of hikikomoris and a lot of NEETs fall under the same category where they're both because they feel like a worthless person or they feel like they're not contributing to society, so they isolate.
Right.
And
do you think perhaps some of these people, you look at the spectrum where it might be like somebody who's really creative, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't fit into the traditional standard. Like, I don't feel like I fit into. Like, I don't want to climb ladders and get master's degrees, and I don't care about making millions of dollars. I mean, it would be great, but like, it's not my ultimate goal. Like, I consider myself somewhat of an intellectual, but I have like this creative side, and to be able to like follow more creative outlets, you usually are not going to make a lot of money, right? Like, you're a starving artist kind of thing. But if you look at it like, okay, so maybe some of these people are dealing with that, but then maybe like the other half of the people, maybe some of them had like learning disabilities or struggled in school and maybe tried to start college, but then it became too overwhelming and their parents are not really accepting of that.
Especially in Japan, where getting into college is a very rigorous task. These entrance exams, kids have been studying for since they're in elementary school.
Wow.
It's a whole ordeal over there.
Because their whole culture is kind of bred around that, right? Like, a lot of Eastern cultures are bred around that. You get through school, you make excellent grades. Mm-hmm. If you don't, we beat your ass. Mm-hmm. And then you get to college and you get a master's degree and you get married. And like, if you don't do those two things, you're a shame to your family.
Right. And
basically.
A lot of it too is like they're breeding this like, all right, you're in school, you go to school because they go to school for the most part almost year round. They have like breaks, but are only like a couple weeks long. Mm-hmm. But then a lot of kids and a lot of parents, they want their kids to succeed. So they send them to cram school, which is school after school. And they send them to all these other programs. And they send them to English classes. So they're basically...
So when do they even have time to develop social skills?
They don't.
Because it sounds like they spend all of their free time.
And it's not everybody, but majority of the population, especially if you have the money to send your kids to do these things, you're probably going to do it.
Wow.
So,
and you know, since the Hikikomori have to be supported by parents, then a lot of these kids probably do come from maybe not necessarily rich, but well off enough families
that they're able
that their parents are able to pay for their own bills and then also pay for an apartment and everything else.
Right.
So. All right. So keep telling us about who's the guy that wrote the anime? What's his name?
His name is Tatsuhiko Takimoto. I've butchered that today.
Tatsuhiko Takimoto.
And
that sounds like a delicious dish.
You really want a Tatsuhiko at the side of Takimoto?
Yes. Sounds wonderful. Please, can I get a double of that?
Double Tatsuhiko Takimoto, please. There's not a lot of information on Mr. Takimoto because...
He's a shut-in.
He's a shut-in.
He's not out there telling everybody about his life, right?
Yes, he wrote.
So you couldn't really find anything biographically, like who his parents were, or how he grew up, or anything?
Nothing like that. Just like how he feels about... He wrote Welcome to the NHK like in the early 2000s while he was going through a period of being a hikikomori. And...
See, you're saying it now. Hikikomori.
Is it? Maybe I'm saying it wrong.
Hikikomori. No, I think it's Hikiki. I remember looking at the spelling or whatever when you told me this was your topic. So,
either way, we're gonna call it a Hikiki for short.
Hikiki. He was being a Hikiki.
He was being a Hikiki. He was living as a shut-in for about a year. And he wrote this story because it kind of like resonated with him. And it also resonated with a lot of people. It got really popular because people were like, this is what I am. This is me.
Do you think the story is really just about himself and he like created characters? But like if we watched his anime, we would really find out some personal details about himself. Maybe he's like secretly releasing or whatever.
Maybe.
Because you watched part of it, right? You said you didn't finish it.
I watched majority. I have an issue where I don't finish things that don't have second seasons. Because I'm always waiting for there to be more. So I'm like, I can't finish this because if I finish it.
Because then you're going to be into it and mad about it.
Right.
Yeah. That's how I feel about Promised Neverland right now.
Oh my gosh. The Promised Neverland, dude. If you have the heart and the stomach and like a strong... Nah, just watch it. It's
a creepy anime, seriously. Even if you don't like anime, but you like murder and mystery and mental health,
and orphans.
Clearly you must because you're listening to this podcast. then you will really enjoy it. And it's on Netflix.
It is on Netflix in English.
Yeah. The Promised Neverland.
It's really good.
It's really great.
And it's beautifully done, too.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Anyway, so we don't know shit about this guy, except that he's a recluse. And he only lived that way for a year. He doesn't live that way now?
He does live that way now. He says, in the most recent interview, he says, I've been living for the last 7 years like a NEET. I've been living off the royalties of this book, and I haven't been producing or doing anything else.
So what's going to happen when the royalties run out?
I don't know.
He'll probably write another one, right? Because he'll be forced to.
He's been working on other projects that he just hasn't completed. He's like still tweaking them, but it's been like 7 years where he's still tweaking these projects.
So he does have some perfectionistic sides too.
Probably. Definitely, yeah.
Maybe he has ADHD.
He might.
I mean, he sounds like me a lot. I'm a perfectionist.
But a big thing, and I feel like talking about the topic of hikikis, let's call them hikikis, we should talk about the psychiatrist Saito Tamaki.
Okay.
He coined the term Hikikomori back in 1998. And
so it's been going on that long?
It's been going on since the 80s.
Wow.
Yes. And he says it has a lot to do with the shift of culture to a more salaryman workforce from like traditional Japanese culture.
Which was what? What was the difference?
Yo, they were really into colonizing and war in the early 1900s.
So you didn't have to like...
And then there was imperialism, feudalism. There wasn't like... They kind of transitioned over to being like super high tech really quickly.
So it's basically like every culture where we used to be able to just kind of take our strengths and work towards those, whether you were, you know, a great soldier, but you couldn't work for a corporation, or you were really into the arts and people actually hired you to come paint them because cameras didn't exist.
Right.
And then I feel like that's a big reason why I don't fit into society, because a lot of the skills and abilities that I have are not going to...
It's not considered productive or like necessary right now.
Right. Everything is about productivity and driving up money for massive corporations.
Right. Where I think I would be an awesome hunter-gatherer. Like
same. So much same.
Right.
Bitch, did you see those mushrooms I collected last week?
We went on a hike. And this hike turned into crystal foraging for mushrooms. We never even
got to see the end of the hike.
We didn't even make it in like a whole mile.
But Fee gave me a new rule that we have to make it to our summit first, and then I can hunt for mushrooms on the way back.
On the way back. Because there's probably better mushrooms up top.
I mean, probably. But I'm always paranoid if I don't pick it now, somebody's going to take it. Anyway, okay.
First of all...
Back to the topic.
But Saito Tamaki, he wrote an excerpt in an article. Right now, this came out recently. He's like, the Hikikomori population is going to hit 10 million within the next couple of years. Because it's just the way the job force is going, the way...
Are there not a lot of jobs? Or is it just like the whole idea that the only jobs available are healthcare or technology? Like, that pretty much seems how it's going here in the U.S.
Right, it's kind of
like if you don't have an IT degree or you're not a nurse or a doctor, like you're going to struggle, or you're going to get phased out with automation or whatever else.
You're basically like we're all checking out our own groceries right now. That's ridiculous. I hate that.
I know.
But there is a lot of jobless people, not just in Japan. There's a big Hikikomori population in Italy. There's a big population in, I think, a lot of Middle Eastern countries. We have some...
I'm sure it's going on everywhere.
Right.
I mean, it's basically being a hermit, right? And hermits have existed forever. Hermit,
but, like, somebody's taking care of you. So, hermits are pretty, like, self-sufficient.
Right. Yeah, you find them in the woods.
Yeah.
They're eating squirrel.
Right.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Whereas the Hikikomori, like, they're relying on their family and the people around them, like, basically keep them alive.
That is bullshit. I want somebody to basically keep me alive.
Get a sugar daddy.
Any sugar daddies who'd like to write in with frontal lobe problems, please hit me up. Just kidding. I'm in a relationship.
Yeah. But I'm not. And
but
any
Fifi's not. And any sugar daddies who would like to hit Fifi up, She's down to share her melons.
I'm down to share my melons. I prefer neurotypical because I'm a little crazy. Joking. I'm fine.
Yeah.
One of us has to be balanced,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be me.
Yeah, she's basically like a pet.
If you feed me, pet me,
right,
show me some attention, I'm pretty loyal.
Just a cat. Leave her there. Give her some anime.
I like ramen.
Korean
barbecue every once in a while.
Anything Asian. She walks around calling me Korean terms I don't understand. Sometimes I feel insulted. Ridiculous.
I am a product of my society, okay? But Saito Tamaki also writes that while many become hikikomori due to bullying or harassment from teachers, it's highly rare the cause of abuse or post-traumatic stress disorder. Once someone has entered the hikikomori system over a long term, they fall into a vicious cycle, which Saito expressed with a diagram below, that the individual becomes disconnected from society. Mm-hmm. But as that individual becomes disconnected from society and more reliant on their family also becomes disconnected from society as well.
Because they're too busy taking care of this fucking person not doing anything for themselves. And
he says that in an article, he explains that getting a job or going back to school is not the ultimate goal to rehabilitating a hikikomori. It's more
socialization.
Yes.
Yeah, they're desperate for socialization, just like those bars where they pay to go in and sit with cute guys that give them attention while they drink. Right?
They have a lot of those. It's actually really prominent in a lot of Asian countries, especially the ones with money.
Well, I hope that it doesn't reach 10 million. I hope that this is kind of a slap in the face to their society, so to speak, and kind of wakes them up to the idea that needing social interaction and human connection is extremely important. And this, my favorite topic to bring up when I talk about rehabilitating my psych patients or recovery in general for people that are struggling, is Maslow's hierarchy. And the funny thing about that is I hated Maslow's hierarchy.
Maslow's hierarchy?
Oh my God, I hated it. They made us talk about it constantly. I had to remember every stage. It was so freaking annoying.
What is it like? Food, shelter, and then I can't remember.
So the bottom level is that you have to meet your basic needs, right? And the reason that I love to talk about it now is because there's a lot of judgment of people with mental health problems, and there's a lot of judgment of people with drug addiction, that sort of thing. So, but what they don't understand, and it's a huge issue here in Seattle area, we have a large homeless population, Oregon, all along this coast. And
America in general, there's a large...
there is a large homeless, drug-addicted population, you know, because the war on drugs failed, and we just start to incarcerate people for harmless crimes. But
and then once you're criminalized and once you're in the system, it's hard to come back out. It's hard to get a job.
It's hard to be accepted. And it's the same thing with the hikiki, right? Like, their parents feel ashamed that their children failed. So that's probably part of the reason that they pull themselves from society, because they don't want to have to explain to...
the Johnsons up
the street while they're bragging about their kid, making it through medical school. My kid is living in an apartment in squalor or whatever. So with Maslow's hierarchy, the first, it's a pyramid, and you have to be able to rise through the pyramid in order to reach a level of competency, right? So the first level being a physiological needs. So that's like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction, okay? We help people...
Wait, reproduction is considered a physiological need?
Sex, yeah. Sex is a physiological need.
I thought that would be higher on the pyramid.
Well, if you think about it, sex is... it's something we do... it's a brainstem action.
Right.
It's not...
We don't do it because...
You don't got to be cognitive. You have hormones that control your need to have sex, and you just do it. Just like animals. You just go have sex, right? So it's just like eating, drinking, sex. It's a thing.
Make a shirt. Eating, drinking, sex.
Drinking, sex. It's a thing. Yep, that'll be on our merch when we get that up and running. So, places that I work, crisis centers, that sort of thing. We have people that they come in and they've been using drugs for a while. They're on methamphetamines, which is probably the most common issue, that and heroin. Or we have people who are dealing with mental disorder and, let's say, schizophrenia, where it's very hard to function on your own. And then they start using drugs because drugs kind of, help them cope or whatever. And then they come into our center and we're like, oh, well, we just got to give you these resources and you've got to go meet somebody and in giving you all of this and sending you wherever on this outpatient basis, you're going to be able to just get better, right? We'll hook you up with jobs. We'll tell you where to get food from the shelter or whatever. But if people can't even have basic needs met, like a lot of people that are homeless that I've spoken with, they start using amphetamines on the streets because they're scared to sleep at night. Because when they accumulate some resources, a tent, some things that they need, their medications or whatever, people will assault them or rob them in the middle of the night while they're asleep. So they start using amphetamines so they can stay awake during the dark when the bad things go down, and then sleep during the day when society is walking around and they're less likely to get assaulted. So if we can't even provide people with basic shelter or food, then they're not going to be able to move up the ladder.
Right.
And the next level after that is safety needs. So you need persistent security, employment, resources, health, some property, things that make you feel safe. And if they're struggling to find employment, they don't feel like they have personal security, they don't have access to enough resources, they're not going to be able to move up to the next level, which is love and belonging. So you need friendship, family, a sense of connection. So before you can even reach the fourth level, which is esteem, which is basically what everybody needs self-esteem to be able to accomplish goals, especially lofty goals like getting a master's degree.
Right.
So if you don't have physiologic needs met, safety needs met, and you feel love and belonging, which is probably the largest source of the issue for these people, then you can't even reach enough self-esteem to get to the top level of self-actualization, which is the desire to become the most that someone can be.
Actually, Saito Tamaki talks about that too, where even in some cases of people who are hikikomoris, there's a lot of domestic violence issues because they blame their parents for the way they are, and they lash out at them. Like, you raised me to be this way. You didn't help me adjust better. You didn't help me be a decent adult.
You didn't talk to me about my feelings.
Right.
You didn't let me express myself.
Right.
You pressured me to become successful in career only and nothing else.
And so they lash out at their families because they weren't feeling that, I'm guessing, that love and belonging.
Yeah. And their parents then feel guilty. So then that's why they enable the behavior by supporting them financially. And then they're able to just recluse further because there's nothing pushing them into a fight or flight situation where I have to attain resources for my own safety and health because their safety and health is just being provided to them.
Right. They always reach that level. Okay, these needs are met, but they can never get past the love and belonging, never get to esteem if they're not having their own the support they need.
Yeah. And a couple of the really great documentaries on this culture that I watched on Netflix. One of them talks about a couple that is coming together to try to get public displays of affection to be more common. Mm-hmm. So they set up these booths in Japan, and it's more about the men showing affection towards the women. They set up these booths, and they put a microphone on them, and they have the men come up and scream, "I love you," really loudly in the middle of society, in front of everyone, which, one, you're not loud in Japanese culture, ever. Loudness is rudeness, right? And then two, to be talking about your feelings publicly is inappropriate, And so they've started groups where they invite couples, they're training them that it's okay, they hug each other, they kiss each other in public, they build little dates. I just can't imagine growing up in a society where somebody has to come and do this.
Right. And there's a lot of, and you saying that too, there's a lot of subcultures in Japan that are trying to rebel against the norm, the kawaii subculture, there's kawaii goths, there's cholos there's a cholo culture, like lowriders.
Yeah, like anything to embrace Western culture,
right.
where you can have individuality, you can have, you know, connection with people, and anytime you create a culture, then that gives you an outlet to build connection, right? You're into these same things. Now I don't feel so alone.
And that's like a lot of the youth is finding each other that way, whereas in the other direction, a lot of them are isolating themselves.
Yeah.
And
or maybe they can't figure out like a way to even, because you have to have a certain level of social ability to even connect with people in that way, right?
And they do, a lot of Hikikomoris do connect with each other online. They're very big online, like even the one we're going to be talking about later, Luca, very big on Reddit. There's like 2,000 people in this subreddit for Hikikomoris that they all communicate with each other and they all feel seen and they all feel like validated.
But part of that too is on the internet, you can present a certain level of yourself.
Right.
But you still get to hide everything.
Right.
So even though they're connecting, they're not fully connecting, right? Because they can post pictures that only look good, and they can, you know, live in this sim world of, and I think that's happening a lot with our society in general. I worry about my kids and the kids that are out there because they just are too embarrassed to even function with all this technology.
Myself.
Yeah, right? And all of us during COVID. I mean, I can't wait to see the studies in 20 years of what these long-term effects are going to be like.
Can't wait to see the alcoholism in 20 years.
Yes. I was just saying that yesterday. Like, let's look at the liver panel studies from our generation, you know, the millennials when we're in our 60s and 70s.
Just look at my liver panel studies now.
All right, so you have some great quotes from the writer of the NHK.
Right.
I wanted to hear about those. I was excited to see what he had to say.
So Mr. Takimoto has left us with some quotes. I say it like he's dead. He's still alive and well, I think. We don't know. First one is from his novel, Welcome to the NHK. It goes, being alone is best. I mean, it's true, isn't it? In the end, you'll be absolutely alone. Therefore, being alone is natural. If you accept that nothing bad can happen, that's why I shut myself away in my 6-mat, 1-room apartment.
So nothing bad. So there's a lot of paranoia and fear that something bad's going to happen to them. And I feel like, you know, I can't see into his life or what his parents did, but there must have been a lot of insecure attachment with them and maybe even some physical abuse. I don't know. I know that, you know, a lot of cultures, you know, let's say in Catholic school, right? They used to beat your hands with rulers if you weren't behaving.
The school we used to go to, if you got in trouble, you could get paddled. You could get sent to the principal's office and paddled.
So, like, the lesson you learn is if you're quiet, you isolate, you don't talk, and you stay away from everyone, no one can hurt you.
Right.
And that's what I hear in that quote, that it's really more about personal safety. Which is only the second level of Maslow's hierarchy. So he hasn't even, you know.
I don't think, and I remember learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is a lot of people never reach that top part.
No, they don't.
That self-actualization.
A lot of people are stuck on levels 1 and 2.
Yeah. I feel like I'm stuck on levels 1 and 2.
I mean, we're constantly, you know, living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Particularly in our generation, from, you know, millennials to Gen Zers now. We've inherited this
college debt.
Yeah, and this economic situation where it's extremely hard to get a house and, you know, our paychecks are barely covering our rent. I mean, the average rent here in Washington State is $2,000 for a small apartment.
Like, oh.
It's crazy. So what's the story about the guy here in America you said you had?
All right, well, let's talk about Luca. Luca lives right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the 21 years of his life, for the last 10 years, he's only left his room to buy Camel cigarettes that he smokes in his garage. And he spends time in his room posting on Reddit, gaming, and watching anime. He sleeps all day, wakes up at 6 in the evening, and pops a Benadryl around 9 in the morning so he can go back to sleep. He's been living the same exact day, almost every day, for nearly a decade.
Wait, so what time does he go to bed?
At 9 a.m.
9 p.m.?
A.m.
Wait, he stays up all night?
Yeah, he wakes up at 6 p.m. and stays up till 9 a.m.
So he sleeps during the day with the
day.
help of Benadryl.
Right.
And he's been taking Benadryl for 10 years?
Yes.
Wow.
That's his routine. And that's, like I said, with a lot of Hikikomori is they're not active during the day. They try to... a lot of people ask, like, what do they do all day? Well, for the most part, they sleep all day. And then at night, they either have, like, a particular hobby they're into.
Are we sure they're not drinking blood? Because they sound like vampires.
Sir, you're really pale. You got that mangy black hair. Your teeth look really sharp.
Oh, no. I'm sure some of them are definitely disheveled. Like, I'm sure they are mangy and not taking care of themselves. Because that's typically what happens with most of my psych patients.
Right.
You know, that come into my units. Their hair is not clean. Their bodies are not clean. They don't like to shower. Mm-hmm. Showers are almost a scary process for them.
And that's what he was saying about Luca when he met him. He was like, he wore a leather jacket. He reeked of cigarette smoke, had mangy hair, didn't shower, and had long fingernails. And he said during the first and most severe year, he remained within a walk-in closet and only ate ready-to-eat food, did not bathe, and urinated and defecated in jars and bottles.
Wow. Just anything to avoid leaving the safety of his room.
You're right.
I kind of empathize with this. When I have been dealing with some of the symptoms of my PTSD, which I'll get into later, I'm sure, in subsequent episodes, some of the things that I've been through. I felt that way. My bed and under my blanket.
It's safe.
It's safe. It's safe. And because I'm in this like escalated feeling at the moment of being under attack because I've been triggered or whatever, then doing anything is scary. It's scary to leave my room. If my bathroom weren't in my room, like that would be a struggle because I don't even want that external stimulation of somebody seeing me in the hallway and trying to talk to me.
There's been many times where I like sneaked around my house just to get to the kitchen so I don't have to interact with my family.
Yeah. It's horrible. Well, that sounds really sad. 10 years. 10 I can't imagine.
And he said it started at the age of 12. He was having extreme anxiety at school. Like he couldn't even like talk. It was that bad. He couldn't say anything. He would shake. His mother allowed him to do homeschool. Online school for a bit, and he ended up dropping out at the age of 15. And that's when he found the anime Welcome to the NHK that he identified with because he identified with the struggles the main character was going through.
And, that mom, she probably just thought she was making the right decision, but that's not the decision I would suggest from a psych nurse perspective. Once you notice that extreme level anxiety was allowing your child to not be able to function at all, you really should be reaching out for some mental health help. And then bringing them home, to me, is not really the solution because then you're just kind of enabling the behavior to get worse. A lot of people that have phobias, even with the phobias interacting in society, exposure therapy has been long well known to work. And if you don't even expose somebody to being able to practice being social because now they're at home, you're only going to make them worse. And that's probably what's happening with the hikikis. Their parents don't know how to deal with it because there's no support or resources. And they're like, well, we'll just pay for you an apartment. And then they just get worse and worse and worse.
Right. And this person is talking about another hikikomori he met also in the U.S. under the name Mr. H. He said, while exhibited traits consistent with obsessive-compulsive and schizoid personality disorders, various scales and inventories concluded that Mr. H had neither. He claimed his reclusiveness based on something pretty simple. He just didn't want to be a part of the world, which is both what Hikikomori Japan had long said and basically what Luca told me.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go for that. I mean, I can't necessarily say that everyone is going to be schizotypal.
Yeah.
Or, meet one of those higher level diagnoses. But at the minimum, they all admit that they're experiencing some anxiety.
Right.
And that extreme anxiety is pushing them to become antisocial. And so not being able to cope with that anxiety is the problem here. To me, anyway.
And said one could argue that neatdom is a logical response to the fact that the average college graduate in 2016 came out of school with about $37,000 in debt.
I mean, that may be a real reality.
Yeah.
And hopefully there's something we can do about it, if only the
government wasn't.
Older generations would take it seriously what kind of damage is happening to our generation with
that part too.
With those sort of things.
I'm just waiting for everybody to die out so we can get some better people to make some better laws.
Yeah, horrible. So I actually found this really great story about a hermit. And super interesting. So I know this was like kind of your topic.
I think we should both tell stories about local hermits.
But I think you would love to hear about this guy. So, he lived in the woods for 24 years. Mm-hmm. And essentially he was fleeing a murder he didn't commit.
See, this man has reasons.
So a Russian man spent more than 20 years living as a hermit in the wilderness, hiding from a murder it turns out he didn't commit. He believed he had killed his wife and daughter in a drunken rage. Nikolai Gromov fled to the dangerous Siberian taiga, avoided wolves, bears, and even tigers. Siberia. Oh my God. So he's in the woods
out
in the cold.
Well, he's Russian. He's fine.
Wow. Hopefully he had a lot of vodka.
I thought alcohol made the cold worse.
I don't know. It warms me up. But when he finally returned to civilization 24 years later, Gromov, now 72, learned the murder never occurred. Wow.
Was he on drugs?
Fucked up.
Oh, he said
he thinks he was in a drunken rage, right? His sad tale began decades ago when Gromov quit his job as a logger and joined the army. He eventually married, and in 1970, he and his wife, Lyubov Petrovna, had a son. 5 years later, they had another child, a girl. At some point in the late 1970s, Gromov was arrested on unknown charges and sent to a penal colony where he fell in love with another woman. Gromov and his lover broke out of the colony, escaping to an abandoned cabin in the forest. The two were eventually discovered, and Gromov was sentenced to 12 more years in prison. Wait, so he was put in prison on unknown charges.
He was sent to a penal colony. Why are there women in this colony?
I don't know. We'll just somebody Google what a penal colony is in Russia and spoon feed that to us, please.
Russian law and judicial system, because it might not be the same judicial system we're thinking of.
His prison girlfriend disappeared, and his marriage to Petrovna dissolved. Somehow, Gromov found love again with a woman in Tasha in southeastern Siberia. But after giving birth to their daughter, Elena, his new flame abandoned him, leaving Gromov to care for the girl alone. Oh, that's interesting. With nowhere else to go, he returned to Petrovna, who agreed to take him and Elena in. So that was his first wife. Mm-hmm. The new family seemed happy at first, but Gromov began drinking and becoming violent. According to Russian news site A1, at some point in the early 1990s, Gromov physically attacked Petrovna and the now 6-year-old Elena, then stormed out in search of more alcohol. When he sobered up and returned, the house was empty. Gromov believed he had killed Petrovna and his daughter. He fled into the woods, building a wooden shelter in the Irkutsk wilderness where he stayed. Eventually, Gromov injured his leg, but refused to get treatment for fear of being found out by authorities. Eventually, the wound became gangrenous, and he was forced to go to the hospital, where his leg was amputated. Realizing Gromov was homeless, doctors contacted social services, which is when authorities realized who he was. He was arrested on an outstanding warrant for the assault, but was eventually released because the statute of limitations had long passed. Can you imagine you hid for 24 years? You come back and the first thing that happens to you is you're arrested again.
It's not the first thing that happens. The first thing that happened was he lost his leg.
He's lost his leg, no shit. So now he's a hobnob. Mm-hmm. That really sucks. But I mean, it sounds like he deserved it. He's been arrested multiple times for bad behavior.
What's his name?
Gromov.
Gromov is very different from a traditional
Hikikomori, yeah. Petrovna did not live to see her husband again. She died in a bathtub accident earlier this year.
Is this story made up?
I don't.
There's so much going on.
A bathtub accident. At first, Elena said she had no interest in being reunited with her father. I don't want to see him. Why would I need him? I haven't heard a word from him all these years. I thought he wasn't alive. But she relented and helped police identify Gromov. We met shortly when he was taken out of the police station, she said. He told me, "Do not hold evil thoughts about me. A father is a father, albeit a stupid one."
No.
And those were his final words before he was taken to jail.
Okay, here's the
After
thing.
spending 24 years in the woods.
Let's talk about... No. We should have saved that for a different... This is a different kind of... No.
But 24 years. 24 years in the woods.
He probably had like a bear friend. You know, you had a bear friend.
A bear friend?
A tiger friend. He probably met some other wood inhabitants.
I mean, one of my favorite shows on Netflix is Alone. And those people barely made it in Alaska for like 90 days.
But he was already in jail. In prison. He already lived in a penal camp. He has the survival skills to be out in the woods.
And he really wanted to live. I mean, if you want an example of somebody with the will to live, it's spending 24 years in the woods because you think you killed someone.
Because you don't want to get caught again. You're like, I already served my time. I'm not going back.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that story and enjoyed learning about the Hikiki.
The Hikiki.
Hikiki. We are going to post a couple of images of the Hikikomori lifestyle on our social media pages and a little more information if you'd like to learn more about it. Our Facebook is Mental Myths and Mysteries, and you can find us on Insta at Mental Mysteries. We hope that if you're struggling, you reach out for some help and find some therapy or just let someone know what you're going through. If you're experiencing some anxiety that you think could lead to agoraphobia during COVID, it's really important that you try to reach out and find some help so you don't end up one of the people on our show. Bye, guys. As I mentioned earlier, for the holidays, Triple M is showcasing local artists from around the world, and you can check out our social media page to see art this week from Elisa Musgrave. You can find Elisa on Insta at Elisa Inspired. That's ELISAINSPIRED. Support small business and pick up a custom Christmas present or hit her up for a commission. Thanks, Alicia, for sharing your art with us and being a listener.